Very, very excited to be here with you all to talk about really the latest with Solana on this exciting little session we're going to have on on building the world's internet markets. My name is Henri Arslanian. I'm the co-founder of 9 Blocks Capital, one of the market-neutral crypto hedge funds regulated in Dubai. And I spent 15 years here in Hong Kong, so good to be back here, back home. Actually, on that perspective, we're going to talk today about a lot of the latest developments on Solana, what's happening in the ecosystem, and the future of Solana. And to do this, we're joined by Lily Liu, the president of the Solana Foundation. Lily, great. Welcome to Hong Kong as well.
Thank you, Henry.
Fun fact, by the way, Lily, many people know her as the president of the Solana Foundation. One thing you may not know about her, she used to be in the crew team at Stanford in the rowing activity, in the rowing sports, the boats of 8 people, from what I understand.
That's
Hong
right.
Kong, we have Dragon Boat. Here we go, and you have rowing as well, and crew. And
it's very relevant to crypto because what it teaches you is pain tolerance.
Pain tolerance, and unfortunately, well, we need that a lot in the industry. So, Lily, there's a lot. I'm sure a lot of people want to hear from you on what's happening in the Solana ecosystem. I want to cover a lot of developments on the Solana, on broader markets as well. But maybe to set the scene, can you share with our audience what is some of the latest, like the developments you're seeing with the Solana ecosystem, and then we'll dive right in.
Well, frankly, everything is happening on Solana, right? If you look at every single sector, at some point, people have called Solana the DeFi chain, the NFT chain, the gaming chain, the DePIN chain, the stablecoin chain, and lately, yes, the meme coin chain. And so what it really means to be a general purpose L1 is that you have to do the hard thing, which is that you have to have breadth and depth across a full variety of different use cases and verticals that exist in this kind of ever-growing industry.
But you don't think, I mean, you mentioned meme coins, actually, don't you think they bring a lot of new users? I mean, from a data perspective, a lot of the users must be coming from the meme coin ecosystem, I presume, right?
They do. Look, it's no secret that, 16 years on from when Bitcoin was created, what is the ever-present critique that a lot of people have had of this industry? That it's all just about speculation. And that it's been, initially Bitcoin was, 2013 was when it got up to like 1,300, and people felt a certain way about that. And I'm sure you guys remember the ICO days when DentaCoin was worth a couple $2 billion.
Yep.
And then there was, of course, the NFT cycle, gaming coins, so on and so forth. So the idea that people want to be able to speculate on stuff on-chain is not new.
Yeah. So how do you see the future? Lily, let's say we look a couple of years down the line. Today we've had numerous conversations on various L1s and how the ecosystem is growing. What's your view, let's say, not only from a Solana perspective, but also yours, on the future of like a cross-chain and multi-L1 ecosystem? Do you believe there'll be interoperability? You believe there'll be 50 L1s? Like, how do you see the future roadmap?
Sure. I think there's going to be, I don't think you're going to have the same market kind of dominance allocation as you have in, for example, search or in e-commerce. Because I think that the cost to go start, market, and get to some degree of scale on a new chain is that startup cost, and also the incentive to exit is just a fundamentally different kind of expected value calculation than if you're building in the Web 2 world, whether it's e-commerce, SaaS, or whatever it might be, right? And even as those kind of EV calculations come down over time, as there's more chains and more use cases and so on and so forth built out, I think that's one of the one of many unique dynamics in crypto, which is that it's open source. Almost anyone can go and launch a chain. That does not mean that all chains, in the same way that not all websites are equivalent, right?
No.
There's, I don't even know how many millions of websites, and yet there are a few that are hugely dominant. So I think, yes, it's going to be a multi-chain world. And also what we've seen is that, because these chains are not just technology, they're also communities. And they're ultimately communities of users. And that is actually what gives coins and chains longevity over time. And so essentially, once a coin has a community, they don't really actually go away. I mean, I don't know how many people have looked at the market cap of, for example, Ethereum Classic,
Yep.
which very few people talk about, or even Bitcoin Gold or Bitcoin Diamond, and they have huge market caps still because of sort of the original size of the community they were imbued with, and also longevity as well. So I think, yes, it's going to be a multi-chain ecosystem, and recognize that. But what I think is going to be the most unique about something like Solana is what really drives value. Why are blockchains valuable? Well, I think that it's always been, blockchains have always been about creating global financial infrastructure,
Yep.
right? That is the title of the white paper. It says peer-to-peer electronic cash system. It does not say digital gold, which is not to say that, that there's a store of value digital. Extremely important for us to for that to be basically the anchor asset of our entire industry. But what about the rest of that vision, right? Who's going to be building that, and what infrastructure can support that? So that, from my perspective, is what Solana is here to do. That's why we talk about internet capital markets being the infrastructure for that.
But when you look in the future of Solana, I mean, obviously we're talking about the world internet markets, but do you believe each chain will have a specialization or an area they're mostly focused on? And if for Solana, what do you think that niche will be, if any?
Well, I wouldn't frame it as a niche. I think that if the whole purpose of blockchains is to be global financial infrastructure, then inherently this entire kind of tech stack, this entire purpose of this industry is about creating a financial layer and financial infrastructure which is accessible to 5.5 billion people, right?
Yeah.
The quantum of people that have access to the internet.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then really the core function is to have liquidity, right?
Yeah.
To provide global liquidity. And one could look at the kind of extreme sort of explosion of interest in speculative use cases and say what that proves out is that if you can tap into the global liquidity of anyone who can log onto the internet, then you have potentially explosive markets.
Yeah.
And so I think I don't see that as actually as a niche. I see
Yeah.
that as being the foundational purpose of what we're all doing here.
Yeah, it's broader than that. I remember when post FTX, a lot of people said, "Oh, Solana is dead. There's not much interest." And obviously, Solana has had obviously had rocket choppy couple of months, but I mean, it's been actually quite a successful year or two since FTX, especially. To what do you attribute the success of Solana? Is it the power of the community? Is it the tech?
Yeah.
Is it the foundation doing a great job? Like, what really drove a lot of this
It's
surge
really
in interest?
the tech and the community, and from an outside observer in November 22 and December 22, I can understand why a lot of people looked at Solana and said, most certainly dead, right?
Yeah.
Most certainly roadkill, might come up for a breath or two, but that's done. But really, from the perspective of being inside the community, not much changed, right? People are still building and still had actually doubled down in conviction. And not even that, I will say there are a number of people that in November 22 actually said, I feel excited about this, right? Because we have a chance to continue building what we believe in and really rebuild the ecosystem as well. So maybe it's just the pain tolerance, right? We talked about
Exactly.
earlier.
Here we go. Rowing comes in, being crew comes in handy. Out of interest, any regions of the world where you're seeing more interest on Solana that compare like globally when you guys look at it from a global perspective?
Yeah, so Solana, look, open source, ultimately we're just a
Yeah.
GitHub repo. We're all public servants of a GitHub repo is what we all are at the end of the day. This technology, open source, is inherently global. That said, it's something that should feel, Chinese in China, should feel American in America, should
Yeah.
feel German in Germany and Indian in India, right? So the use cases and what people want to do with the underlying technology will be expressed in the developer community, in the application layer, and the choices that people make, and that's exactly what it should be. Now, if you ask me, what are the most important markets in crypto? Well, it's always been the same answer, right? Which are the two large markets that have breadth in talent and in capital? Well, that's the US and China.
Yeah.
And over the last 4 years, I wouldn't say that both of those markets have been terribly open to crypto. That's where everything has started from the very beginning. And so it's kind of like an ebb and flow type of thing. I think since November, when we have a just total sea change, and kind of like that US-shaped hole in the middle of this industry is now being filled, did a complete 180,
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a ton of changes, right? Because what's happening is the US is just changing the Overton window on every topic, right? Way outside of crypto as well, but also changing kind of where the median point is on crypto regulation, wanting to be a leader in technology, and also seeing stablecoins as being strategic to the US. And I think that's going to really push quite a number of people around the world.
To what extent, if from a scale to 1 to 10, of course, we all know that obviously change in the US is positive for the industry, and we all seeing what's happened, different conversations from stable coins to strategic reserve discussions to the end of regulation by enforcement as well. What is the main development you are watching in the US you think will have an outsized impact on the, not only on the Solana, but also the broader crypto ecosystem?
Yes, I think that certainly there's going to be a lot of kind of legislation and very specific things that people are looking at, right? But the biggest one that already has been signaled is we're no longer going to persecute the crypto industry, right? And we're no longer going to take this entire group of people just as a class because of some sort of ideological disagreement, and we're going to say they're all bad and they should all should be debanked, and in indirect and direct ways take the full weight of the state and turn that against this industry. Okay, great. So we're over that. And then I think it's, well, we'll see what gets embraced, but I think one that is very aligned is on stablecoins. And so from the US perspective, it's very clear that the US wants to be dominant in all technologies that matter. And the US is also very interested in extending US dollar dominance, and stablecoins are a way of continuing to extend the economic sphere of the dollar. I think I was looking at some charts the other day, and there are 50 economies around the world that have over 5% CPI inflation, right? And that accounts for about 1 billion people in the world. And so I think the US kind of just sees this very strategically, and potentially even that incremental demand perhaps even being able to affect long-term interest rates, which is a big KPI of the Treasury at the moment.
Yeah, I can imagine that. One topic, and I'm sure you've been asked this multiple times, many people think about Solana, they think about meme coins, and now the last 72 hours, we think about Libra with the whole debacle there. To what extent do you believe this whole meme coin, Libra, let's say noise around, pumped up fun and everything, was positive or negative on the broader Solana ecosystem?
Well, I don't think that Libra is bad for everyone, right? I don't think there's any question about that.
You don't think it's bad, or
I think it is bad for everyone.
Bad, yeah, okay.
Right,
yeah, okay.
It's very clearly bad for everyone involved.
Correct.
I think it's a pretty terrible situation. I don't think there's much to discuss there.
Yeah.
I think that now with meme coins, okay, well that's what, anywhere between 20 and 50,000 meme coins a day. Are all of them Libra? No. Are all of them going to be sort of retirement assets you're going to be holding down, handing down to your children?
What?
No.
They're not? Oh, man. Yeah.
But what I think, I hate to go back to regulation again and again, but what's happened in this industry is, so there's this technology that sort of remixes money, social connections, a sense of community, and does that globally. It's pretty radical technology at the end of the day, right? And has the ability to kind of also recombine aspects of what you would previously have called a transaction token, utility token, and also things that have some sort of yield-bearing element to them. And so because of this kind of regulatory uncertainty we've had in basically all jurisdictions in the world, what people have been pushed into is they've been pushed into the extremes. They've been pushed into, well, anything I do that I sort of will, if I engage in sort of good faith innovation around governance mechanisms, on-chain price discovery mechanisms, ways of sort of actually transparently engaging the community in utility governance, whatever, that's a really risky area to be in. Or even if you have a token that represents a share of, let's call it a fee pool, that's also considered. So everything that even has a little bit of something in the middle is, well, you better not do that. Otherwise, you basically spend all of your money on lawyers. So that's pushed this entire industry to do things where people just throw up their hands at the very beginning and say, I told you it's worth nothing, never will be worth anything. And I think that that's actually been the product of the regulatory environment in which we live. What I think would be a lot more interesting is to explore all of the, you could call them structured products in between, right? And the ability to have a token that entitles you to, for example, some of the fee revenue in some of these protocols, right? That's always been part of the roadmap of, for example, DeFi. But no one has dared to do that because of just the thicket of, you name it, that would just encounter you on day one.
But you're right, Lily, because it's very ironic the way regulators, they put the constraints are so hard that it pushes people on the sidelines, right? And that's why obviously there's a lot of interest, or I mean, you could argue for a lot of people that are completely cut off of the system, the meme coins are becoming the way. When it comes to DeFi, actually, do you believe, I presume you're pretty bullish on the future of DeFi. Any vertical of DeFi you think is very exciting, and especially from a Solana perspective?
Well, we talk about PayFi a lot. And so to date, DeFi has always been synonymous with trading. The core transaction is a trade of one token for another token. The original vision for the space was the peer-to-peer electronic cash system. That's a transactional economy. It's fundamentally a payments economy where you're sending in, let's call it a token for a good or service in return. Where is that economy? Why does that not exist on chain? Now, might not be surprised that my answer to that is that it has not been able to exist on chain because we haven't had performant infrastructure. Okay, right? You would expect that would be my answer. But I think that that is the part of, if you think about DeFi more broadly than trading, like truly decentralized finance, like an economy that exists on chain, on this kind of global financial infrastructure, then I would say payments is that huge, that's kind of like our white whale as an industry. And that's what I'm the most excited about.
One last question before we move to the fire round of questions. You obviously run the foundation of one of the biggest L1s right now globally. What is the biggest challenge of running a foundation? It's a very unique role you have.
Maybe just the time zones, right? Never sleeps. There's always someone who wants to talk to you.
Yeah.
I think that the sheer breadth of what is happening.
Yeah.
Right? So if you think about the range of, on Web 2, just think about the range of people who use the internet and the range of use cases and even just content that exists on the internet. Now, at least on the internet, there's like no one to call, like 1-800-TCP/IP doesn't exist. Whereas that's the same case of what happens within Solana. There's a full range of financial content. And so on one end, you'll have the money market fund, which is, liked and unobjectionable to everyone. And then on the other end, in the current world, you have financial content that a lot of people find to be very controversial. Let's call them meme coins, right? And so that whole, and you can imagine kind of like, let's just call it the breadth of humanity and civilization that spans those two ends of the spectrum. And so I think, finding ways to be relevant to that full range, because I think that's what it means to be global financial infrastructure, right? That's what it means to be this open source protocol, that you do need to be accessible, available, and infrastructure for the full range of assets, but it's also the full range of humanity.
The full range of humanity. I love it. So, Lily, we have my bell is with me back in Hong Kong. I'm going to ask you quick questions, and I want 1 or 2 words answers.
Okay.
You ready? Mm-hmm. You're back in Hong Kong. What's your favorite thing in Hong Kong?
Eating. Food.
The food. Here we go. Here you go. Even the sheet is falling. Lily, if you're not in the crypto industry, what other industry would you'd be in?
Being a tiger mom.
A tiger mom. Here we go. As a tiger mom, what is the one course you think kids should go learn right now that you wish you had learned when you were a kid?
Oh, well, all starts and ends with math.
Math. Here we go. That's a favorite in Hong Kong.
Very predictable. Yes.
This is a tricky one. If you could hold one other coin, non-Solana, for the next 10 years and not allowed to sell, what would you hold?
Obviously Bitcoin.
Bitcoin.
Or Dogecoin.
Or Dogecoin. If you could go back to university today and take one course you wish you had taken, what course would you take?
I would have taken many fewer classes and hung out more with my friends.
Here we go. Interesting one. Donald Trump gives you a call and wants to put you on their crypto committee. What's the one advice you give to Donald Trump?
Move faster.
Move faster. Here we go. What is the one other layer one you admire, you think have done a good job with their community building and their foundation?
I think Ethereum has done an incredible job of community building. They led the way.
Ethereum. Here we go. Another tricky one. Tomorrow morning, you have to go launch a new startup. You have the choice of these following co-founders. Jack Ma, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, or Taylor Swift.
I'll tell you which one.
Who do you pick?
Any of the first three.
So Taylor Swift.
Probably not.
No, I was figuring, yeah, one of the first three. Interesting one now. This is the final question. Anybody comes on stage with me or goes on to my TV show. Lily, you have the chance to have lunch or dinner with one person dead or alive. Lunch or dinner with one person dead or alive. Who would you have lunch or dinner with?
I want to have lunch or dinner with Trump.
With?
Trump.
Trump, here we go. Guys, this is Lily Liu, the president of the Solana Foundation. Thank you very much for being with us today. We'll pass it back to our MC. Thank you very much, everybody.